Welcome to the ICSS Sunday Morning Marxist Forum. A reminder before we start, we are recording our presentations and the discussions that follow, and we are posting these for our wider audience. The videos will be available on our YouTube channel, ICSS Marxist, and our website, icssmarx.org, in the next couple of days. We have also started sharing our videos on Rumble for a backup, and I'll post the Rumble link later in our chat today, together with the others. Please visit our website, icssmarx.org, to view the past programs, sign up to receive weekly notification mails about upcoming programs and schedules, to contact us, or to donate to us for the funds we truly need to run this educational forum. I would also like to thank here those who have and still continue to support us through their valuable donations. My name is Mehmet Bayram, and I will be hosting this session on Sunday, March 16, 2025. For over 15 years, ICSS Sunday Morning Marxist Forum programs have been a platform for diverse presentations on various topics. This meeting is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. The opinions expressed here are those of the participants, and they do not necessarily represent those of ICS. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our understanding is taken from Karl Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Today, we will be talking about Nicaragua. We are lucky and proud to have with us Sarah Woodard, who is on the ground, in the field, working in Nicaragua to make this world a better place. Sarah Woodard is representing the work of Jubilee House Community organization she helped form in 1979. Working with and on behalf of the poor in North Carolina for the first decade, she spent the last 30 years in Nicaragua with the project name of the Center for Development in Central America, shortly JHC-CDCA. The JHC-CDCA continues to respond to local needs, seeking resources to help the poor accomplish what they see as their priority, particularly in the area of sustainable economic development, organic agriculture, healthcare, and education. The JHC-CDCA is uniquely flexible in responding to climate crisis, able to adjust services ministries as needs change. Sarah is with us to explain the JHC-CDCA's work in Nicaragua and the amazing realities developing with a southern neighbor where both the social and political will are focused on helping the majority of the population, the poorest of the poor. So welcome, Sarah, and it is yours now.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let me say this now because I'll forget to say it later. If at the end you would like to stay in touch with our work, if you would please to put your full name and also your email in the chat. Then if I save the chat, I'll have you, I can add you to our quarterly newsletter. We don't send out a lot of emails, but I'll add you to our quarterly list. All right, let me see if I can share the screen. This should work. Well, I think I have to, hang on, there we go. Can you see that? No? Hang on, I didn't do it right. Let me share. There we go.
Oh yeah, it's coming up now. Yes, yes, we can see it now.
All right, let me move myself out of the way. There we go. All right. So I am delighted to be with you even remotely like this today. I met Mehmet last week, I guess it was, in California. That was fun. And it is Stan Smith's fault that I'm here today. So if you don't like this, you can blame him. But I'm glad to be with you. Well, come on, you've got to work here thing. my clicker. There we go. We are the Jubilee House Community, a nonprofit founded 46 years ago in North Carolina to work with the poor to help improve their lives. We remain steadfast in our commitment to the poor, and we continue to carry out this work through our project, as Mehmet said, our project in Nicaragua, the Center for Development in Central America. We know that people here in the U.S. are feeling confused, uncertain, or scared, feeling helpless or consumed with trying to make things less bad for others. From Nicaragua, we have been watching events unfold here in our native land and wondering, what can we possibly have to offer from 2,000 miles away? Then we realized Nicaragua has weathered unimaginable forces, struggled against outside dominance, and has miraculously emerged resilient and reborn. And we realized that our organization has worked together with those suffering in poverty to struggle against systemic oppression for 46 years, with the last 31 of those years working with the poor in Nicaragua, where at last we are seeing that the tide has begun to turn in favor of the poor. And so maybe there are insights we can draw on from Nicaragua's experience and our own that may prove helpful and useful here, now, in the midst of the confusion. So in the spirit of sparking hope, we offer you today 5 insights from Nicaragua. First, touchstones of tenderness. Before the revolution in 1979, Nicaragua was ruled by the Somoza dictatorship. They were the billionaires of their time, wealthy men educated at West Point and speaking more English than Spanish, installed and propped up by the U.S. in order to further U.S. big business interests in Nicaragua. The Somozas enriched themselves and their cronies while exploiting and impoverishing the Nicaraguan people. Resistance to Somoza began to gain ground in the 1960s with the emergence of the Sandinista National Liberation Front, the FSLN. Among its founders was Tomás Borge, a leader who took his Christian faith and its demand for forgiveness of one's enemies seriously. Arrested, held as a political prisoner, and tortured, he was released in time to participate in the triumph of the Nicaraguan people, overthrowing the Somoza dictatorship in 1979. Tomás was able to forgive his former torturers, saying, "My personal revenge will be the right of your children to school and to flowers. Instead of jailing you, I intend for you to shake the sorrow from your eyes. When you, practitioner of torture, can no longer so much as lift your gaze, my personal revenge will be to offer you these hands you once maltreated without being able to make them forsake tenderness." It is thanks in part to Tomás Borge's testimony that today Nicaragua does not have the death penalty, and that decades ago Nicaraguans openly welcomed us as friends, even while struggling and continuing to struggle against the policies and sanctions our government puts on Nicaragua. In our work in Nicaragua, the CDCA has learned to allow tenderness in, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to be touched by the plight of others. And we let the poor be our touchstones. Is what we are doing of any use to the most vulnerable? If not, then it's simply not worth doing. Our work in healthcare is consistently the area where our hearts break the most, but it is also the area where we most tangibly feel that we are of use to the vulnerable. Decades ago, in 1994, when the CDCA began working in Nicaragua, in our conversations with communities, healthcare was always people's biggest worry. The CDCA responded by hosting medical brigades, and following Hurricane Mitch in 1998, set up a full-time health clinic in Nueva Vida, the refugee neighborhood set up on the edge of Ciudad Sandino. Over the past 25 years, this clinic has provided primary care and medicines to 15,000 patients annually, providing increasingly specialized care as the community's needs and priorities have changed, seeing an average of 70 patients per day in the areas of general medicine, dentistry, psychology, and with laboratory and pharmacy services. We collaborate with the National Ministry of Health, MINSA, to coordinate services and activities at a local level, focusing the CDCA's work in areas not currently covered by MINSA's free and steadily improving health services. Improvements made after the current Sandinista government returned to power in 2007, even increasing through the COVID pandemic. And it is worth noting that 100% of Nicaraguans over the age of 2 are fully vaccinated against COVID. What are our goals in healthcare? To improve long-term health outcomes for Nicaraguans by ensuring access to quality and integral healthcare services. To improve understanding of health issues with a focus on educating younger patients in order to prevent disease and illness. And to provide opportunities for education to Nicaraguan and foreign students and health professionals. How are we achieving these goals? We have a strong network of 30 lay health promoters in Nueva Vida and nearby rural villages who consistently visit patients in their homes, ensuring recovery, follow-up, and quality of life for patients. When patients need further follow-up within the public healthcare system, we provide emotional and practical support with our health promoters accompanying patients in our vehicles to get them care quickly. We are focusing more on dental care. Did you know that regularly cleaning and repairing your teeth is fundamental to your lifelong overall health? In our local public health system in Nicaragua, only limited dental services are available. That's why we are teaching oral hygiene to instill good habits in children and ensuring access through our clinic to cleanings, sealants, fluoride treatments, and restorative dental care. We're using peer support groups to educate patients and community members about chronic illness, STIs, family planning, women's health, pregnancy, breastfeeding, early childhood development, and nutrition. We are rehabilitating the Green Pharmacy Garden and training health promoters and patients in natural medicine. We're helping foreign medical professionals learn from Nicaragua's free universal family and community healthcare model. We do this through hosting medical delegations and internships where volunteers learn from Nicaraguan medical professionals and contribute their volunteer skills, including in health fairs, surgery, and other specialized care. Next, community collaboration. Following the victory of the Sandinista Revolution in 1979, the people of Nicaragua threw themselves into the project of rebuilding their country. Almost immediately, however, the United States organized former National Guard members and wealthy exiled Somoza supporters into a proxy force known as the Contra, funding, training, and arming the Contras who attacked soft targets, torturing and brutally murdering literacy workers, farmers, nurses, teachers, pastors, and children. This continual aggression cost another 50,000 Nicaraguan lives over 10 years, while a U.S.-imposed economic blockade crippled the country. Yet in the midst of this crisis, Nicaragua created a new constitution. This constitution was not written in an air-conditioned boardroom. It was written by the people of Nicaragua in a series of countrywide consultation meetings where everyone from farmers to cleaning ladies had the opportunity to give their input to shape the Constitution. In this way, Nicaragua identified where the people wanted their country to go, fostering participatory democracy. Despite the ongoing war, during the 1980s revolutionary period, Nicaragua managed to redistribute land to poor farmers, teach its people to read and write, eradicate childhood illnesses, and offer its population free education and health care. In the CDCA's work, we learned early on that solutions that do not start from within affected communities are not solutions at all. In order to succeed, all of our projects arise out of needs identified by the community, work towards solutions that come from the communities themselves and are carried out with active community participation. Today, Nicaragua's creative economy is driven by micro and small businesses, the majority owned and operated by women. But many lack the skills necessary to be successful and have asked for our help. What are our goals in community collaboration? To work with vulnerable populations to help them learn marketable skills that will directly improve their family's economy, and to create together a space where participants can feel comfortable and can reach their potential without threat of discrimination. How do we achieve those goals? Well, through our Nueva Vida Clinic programs, in addition to previously offered classes, we are working with 2 new groups that have asked for our support to learn vocational skills with the goal of setting up their own businesses. The first group is Mamas con Metas, Moms with Goals, who are 25 moms of toddlers who need skills to set up a micro business they can run while continuing to look after their children at home. They've just started their first class in event decoration. Now, you may not think this is very important, but in Nicaragua, it's really important to celebrate parties, quinceañeras, birthdays, all that sort of thing. And so these kinds of decorations are definitely a marketable skill from their homes. The second group is the LGBTQ community, in Nicaragua referred to as the sexual diversity community, with 25 members who requested a training program specifically for them. Many in the diversity community do not have the support of their families, often have spent periods of time as sex workers, struggled with addiction, and have been unable to receive an education. We are now working to raise the funds to set up the Divine Salon. The goal is to set up a high-end salon at an old house that was donated to the CDCA in Managua. Participants will learn salon theory and practice makeup and hairstyling with clients. Once they have graduated, participants will become mentors for the new class of participants. Income from the salon will help to finance these, making the project economically sustainable. Additionally, we are continuing to work with our 80 at-risk youth of Nueva Vida with a focus on postponing parenthood, finishing high school, and receiving technical training or going to college. Classes cover a variety of topics, and this year, the older ones are learning how to set up a business model and will do college visits. Next, feed the fight. Leading up to the Nicaraguan election in 1990, the U.S. promised to continue its war unless the people elected the U.S.-backed candidate. As a result, Nicaraguans went to the polls and chose peace, electing Violeta Chamorro, entering into a stark 16-year period of neoliberalism where the rich got richer and the poor got even poorer. The people of Nicaragua fell into a deep depression. Children begged for food at stoplights, and patients died outside of hospitals for lack of medical care. In 2006, the FSLN was voted back into power. Their first act in government was to declare healthcare and education free again. And one of the first emblematic programs was called Zero Hunger. This hugely successful program gives women heads of households a pregnant cow, chickens, feed, and seeds, contributing to Nicaragua now having achieved 90% food sovereignty. The understanding is that you can't have a true democracy when people are hungry. They will always vote whichever way they believe will fill their children's bellies. We've also learned that there's a long way to go, la lucha es larga, and that there is only one place to start, meeting people where they are. First, helping people meet their basic needs. You want to live to fight another day, you've got to be fed today. We're working on feeding the fight in a very real way through sustainable agriculture. What are our goals in feeding the fight? To teach and provide replicable models of sustainable food production and good nutrition, and to support rural coffee cooperatives in achieving the development goals their communities identify. How are we achieving those goals? Well, to date, the CDCA has set up 57 small-scale aquaponics systems in homes and schools in both rural and urban areas of Ciudad Sandino. We have trained family members and teachers to maintain these systems, which grow fish and plants in a closed system. Tilapia fish are grown in a tank, and the dirty fish water then is pumped up into a bed where the plants get the nutrients out of the fish water. Clean water then gravity feeds back into the fish tank, oxygenating the water for the fish. Each system is capable of growing up to 100 pounds of fish and several hundred pounds of vegetables every 6 months in a space that is only 2 meters square. These systems have been so successful that 60 families have applied to receive an aquaponics system, for which we are seeking funding, building on the experience gained by the most successful systems from the first phase of the project. And I'll just add, let me see if I can make my mouse move here. Can you see that mouse? That plant right there in the upper left-hand picture is insulin. And they call it insulina. And these families up and down these little dirt roads who have aquaponics systems, they say you pick a few leaves and you steep them, and it helps to control blood sugar levels. Now, it's not, quantified or anything, but Grandpa up the road is using it, and Aunt around the corner is using it, and it's bringing down people's blood sugar levels. It's phenomenal. So that's really a fun thing that they're growing in the aquaponic systems. I just think the aquaponic systems are really cool. So I get all excited about them. Where am I? Oh, yes. So we're collaborating with the Nicaraguan Fisheries Institute to provide further training and technical assistance. And here they're teaching the families how to make a fish, like a fish croquette, using not only the flesh off the fish, but also grinding up bones and skin so that you get those extra vitamins and stuff to make an edible fish patty. We also support 2 organic and fair trade coffee cooperatives to help them export their product to the U.S., where our project Farmer Shares ships delicious roasted coffee to monthly subscribers. And you can buy a pound or subscribe to buy monthly from this address, info@farmershares.com. Your purchase supports more than 300 families. At the El Porvenir co-op that we've been working with for more than 25 years, those members have owned and worked their land collectively. And newly included this year, Las Diosas is a women's-led cooperative that uses agroecological methods. These resilient women have overcome systemic oppression and domestic violence to create a thriving community, working in areas once considered exclusively men's work. Next, strengthening solidarity. Even before the revolution succeeded, the FSLN wrote out its vision for Nicaragua in its historical program. Today, this 1969 document continues to guide the work of Nicaragua's government. One of the main points of the document is solidarity among the peoples of the world, including the people of the United States, which has been, as you know, the constant and historical aggressor of Nicaragua, saying that the FSLN has vowed to support the struggle of all the people of the United States for genuine democracy and equal rights. Nicaraguans feel a great kinship with the people of the U.S. Throughout the 1980s, when the U.S.-funded Contra War was filling up Nicaragua's graveyards, Nicaraguans were always able to separate the people of the United States from the policies of the U.S. government. In fact, not only were solidarity workers welcomed in Nicaragua, but solidarity of U.S. citizens was of critical support during the Contra War, with Ben Linder as a well-known example. A clown, unicyclist, and engineer from Portland, Oregon, Ben was targeted and killed by the Contra while working to develop a small hydroelectric project to bring electricity to a rural town. Whenever we talk about Nicaragua here in the U.S. and the work that we do in Nicaragua, we get asked many questions. The best answer we can give is, come see for yourself. As liberation theologian Fray Beto said, The head thinks where the feet stand. In other words, the best way to understand something is to see it with your own eyes. What are our goals in solidarity? While all areas of our work in Nicaragua include education, the specific focus of our education program is to educate people from the global north about realities in Nicaragua. The goal of this education is to build solidarity for Nicaragua through the creation of shared understanding and support for the Nicaraguan people. How are we achieving those goals? Well, Casa Ben Linder is our Education, Art, and Solidarity Center in Managua, and when you come down and visit us, this is where you'll stay. The spacious guest house hosts volunteers, groups, and gatherings, as well as organizing tours and classes. In 2025, we hope to host 6 delegations, including 2 medical ones. We also host individual volunteer medical professionals to learn medical Spanish or just regular Spanish. So already in February, the Bird Brigade, birding in Solentinami down on the Big Lake. In March, we're just finishing up Power and Protagonism, Women in Nicaragua. In June, Global Health, Family and Community Health in Nicaragua. In July, Solidarity in Action, Nicaragua's Popular Revolution. In November, Salud y Solidaridad, hands-on healthcare in Nicaragua. And we don't have a date for this yet, but co-ops and communities, cooperative movement in Nicaragua. So please come join us on one of these or pick a date for you all to come together on your own. And finally, fostering flexibility. Nicaragua is not afraid to evolve as needs change. Today, it is often said that the Nicaraguan people are revolutionary and evolutionary, tweaking programs for improvement or even scrapping them altogether in favor of a better way, while keeping the national focus in consultation with all those involved. For example, in 2024, the Ministry of Education spent 6 months consulting with teachers, parents, students, and administrators on all levels of public education around the country in order to completely rewrite its national education strategy. We know from our 31 years of community development work in Nicaragua that needs and priorities change as the country changes. For example, in 1998, Ciudad Sandino received 12,000 refugees from Hurricane Mitch, and a new neighborhood of Nueva Vida was formed with no housing, roads, electricity, water, or health care for its residents. We began to work in this barrio at its inception, where our clinic is today. And in 2007, the Sandinista government came back into power with a political will to improve the lives of poor Nicaraguans, a will that had not been seen in the previous neoliberal governments, reducing poverty by 24.9% in just the past 18 years. Healthcare and education have been made free again. Infrastructure has improved with roads, electricity, and potable water. And we are excited to see the lives of those with whom we work tangibly improving with roads in such a short time. It is truly remarkable progress. But there is still much work to be done in Ciudad Sandino and Nueva Vida in particular. As the situation for the people of Nicaragua has shifted, our flexibility is also needed in response, including responding quickly to disasters. For example, in 2020, we had not planned on 2 Category 5 hurricanes, but they came anyway, one after another in the space of just 2 weeks. The CDCA, we used our flexibility to respond, providing emergency hygiene kits, clothes, and supplies to families temporarily displaced in the North Caribbean region, and seeds for farmers to be able to replant. More recently, the CDCA unexpectedly received a donation of furnished property. We responded with flexibility, donating tables and chairs to preschools, using tables for trainings, setting up the computers for educational opportunities for the young people, the Lobas and Leones. Meanwhile, using the functioning areas of the building to develop a high-end salon reputation, getting ready for the Divine Project, and as a teaching space for theater classes, generating project income. So who carries out all this work? Original founders, board members, current staff, and dedicated supporters. The day-to-day work of the project is carried out by 17 full-time Nicaraguan staff members, 3 part-time staff, 5 full-time volunteers, and a host of part-time interns and volunteers working with the Fab Five, the younger generation of the permanent Jubilee House community. We can't build sustainable communities without you. None of this work is possible without people outside our organization who believe in what we are trying to accomplish and who offer support. We still need your help. How? Well, we need you to donate your time to come to Nicaragua, learn, and contribute to our hands-on work. Share our message through presentations. I was at elementary schools in Alaska a couple of weeks ago. Share newsletters, blogs, and social media with friends and family to increase support for this work. If you're religious, pray for us. Donate your time long distance here in the U.S. What are your skills and resources? Find out how we can use them. Stan used his to connect me to you so I could speak with you today. Those kinds of things are always helpful. And also, we still need you as grassroots financial supporters. Make regular donations, set up recurring donations online, donate stock, donate your IRA required minimum distribution, or plan your giving, put us in your will. We know life is in turmoil here in the US. The very landscape of how to be in the struggle with the poor is changing daily. But we also know that change can happen when we pull together wherever we are, when we recognize and offer touchstones of tenderness, commit to community collaboration, deal with the basics to feed the fight, strengthen solidarity as we build networks across boundaries, always moving as needs change, fostering flexibility. Won't you join us? This tiny planet spinning in space needs us, each of us, and we are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And you can maybe stop the share now or before we start the Q&A. And so before going there, I'd like to remind everybody that we have another great session coming up next Sunday, March the 23rd. It's titled Trump and the Shift in Imperialism. And the speaker will be Alexander McKay. This is a session you would not want to miss. And Alexander McKay is from Marx Engels Lenin Institute, and he will be leading a very interesting discussion on the nature and changes in imperialism under the Trump regime. Now, before we go to the Q&A, I'd like to remind once again to please respect the time of the speaker and the other participants by limiting yourselves to around 2 minutes and sticking to one question if possible, so that the speaker can respond. So I have
if I can remind, if people
Sure.
are interested in staying in touch with us, if you would please put your full name and your email in the chat, please.
That would be great. Okay.
Thank you.
So then we are going to go to hands. If you want to participate, please use the icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen to raise your hand, and you will be given time to ask questions. So I think Norma is the first person. So go ahead, Norma.
Okay, hello everybody. I offer the suggestion to, this is gorgeous. It is wonderful to hear about your work, and our hearts are filled with joy at the report. And we know that this is what happens in a socialist struggle. I'd like to offer to the people at large here the idea that we look at China and see if there is a similarity in the sense that China is employing tactics called capitalist. And I say it's in order to maintain the struggle for communism. And that's my offer is, do you want to talk about that? Does anybody want to think about that and talk about it? That they have that direction. And of course, I, the great believer, think that Russia too is working to have a reflection of the Russian Revolution in their maintenance of a position in the worldwide struggle.
Okay, Sarah, would you like to respond or?
I have no opinion. I can tell you about my little corner in Nicaragua, but I can't go any wider than that.
Well, I hope I was clear that I'm putting it out for people to get involved with the analysis. Besides you, I mean, you have explained everything extremely well. We don't need further explanation because that's everything we need.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And so now we're going to go to Stan. Stan, please unmute yourself. Oh, just a minute. I don't know if you have okay, just a minute.
Hear me?
Unmute. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, unmute. Yeah, I work with the Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition, so I'm very interested in what she had to say and hear about the work that they're doing and how we can defend the gains that they are making and the Nicaraguan people and Nicaraguan government are making nowadays. I would like to emphasize, she mentioned it, but I think the Casa Ben Linder is the only organization in Nicaragua in relation to North America that organizes tours for people to come down to visit Nicaragua. So if any of you are interested in coming, which I think Roger Harris is in Nicaragua right now, Casa Ben Linder is a very good way to go Nicaragua and learn about Nicaragua. I also work on solidarity with Venezuela and Cuba, and I'm kind of struck by what Sarah was saying, is how similar your kind of work is to the communal councils in Venezuela, where the government encourages people in different local areas to prioritize what they think their needs are in their areas and how much money they would need to get these projects that they need to improve their local areas. And then the government gives them money so they can carry out community projects to improve whatever they want in their local areas. It seems like that's very, very similar to what you're doing in Nicaragua, and it's a very, hands-on, direct way of organizing people to take the action they need themselves to improve their own lives together. One thing maybe you could talk about is the U.S. economic warfare that is countries waging against Nicaragua now. I mean, they do that with basically a full-scale blockade on Cuba and Venezuela, but I think they'll be escalating it more on Nicaragua. And I think the U.S. government is trying to interfere with organizations like yours that are working to improve the lives of Nicaraguan people, interfere with you being able to raise money in the United States to kind of block this kind of support that you get here. Could you talk a little more about what are the U.S. sanctions and economic measures they take against the Nicaraguan government and people?
Sure. This has been going on a long time. This isn't just this administration. Go back to 1850 and United Fruit and Dole Pineapple, and it starts way back there. Then in the 1950s, the Somozas were the U.S. big business approved dictator family in Nicaragua. And then you can't have a little tiny country throwing out the U.S. big business partners. You can't have that example because then everybody else might do it too. So you have to do something. So put sanctions on Nicaragua, do economic blockades, mine Nicaragua, lose in the world court and don't pay your damages to Nicaragua. All that kind of stuff's been going on a very long time. And it doesn't really matter who's president here, because from our perspective, it seems that the misinformation or deliberate false information is continuing to be generated by the State Department and moving forward through the State Department, administration after administration. In 2018, when there was the coup attempt, which fortunately did not succeed in Nicaragua, the U.S. State Department raised the travel advisory. They have left it at a level 3. That means that all of our university students who used to come down 2 and 3 times a year can no longer come because university legal beagles won't permit their students to come down to any area in the world where it's a level 3 travel advisory. That's a very simple, make it a yellow level 3, and you keep all your young adults from coming. And, but that's a State Department thing. U.S. sanctions have affected the organic agriculture people, the farmers that we work with, in very drastic ways, not because the sanctions affect them directly, but because lenders get scared to go against U.S. foreign policy and think they will get in trouble if they don't side with U.S. big business. The aquaponics, the 60 systems that we have waiting for funding, the funding on that was approved until the top level folks went, oh, wait, U.S. sanctions, we're not doing any more projects in Nicaragua, even though nothing about the aquaponics, neither the project nor the way the money is handled, has anything to do with sanctions. So it's a very real thing, and how it affects like our work is just, one set of examples of how this is going on. And there are more sanctions coming down the pipeline. So far, we are a legitimate 501c3 nonprofit in the US with, you can look us up on the IRS web base. We're all tidy and good. And so far we are fully cleared, accepted, etc. in Nicaragua. And we're doing our work there, like working with the Fisheries Institute on the aquaponics or working with the Health Department, MISA, on clinic stuff. We're doing that kind of stuff. Whether it can get maintained and kept, we don't know. But it's also really hard with everything that's happening up here for our grassroots supporters to, if you're going to send $100 somewhere, where are you going to send it? Are you going to send it to something local that's just gotten canceled by the federal government here? Or are you going to send it to help people in Nicaragua? That's a tough call when you have $100 you can send someplace. So that kind of thing also affects whether or not we can do our projects. And it's a direct outcome of policies that are happening up here. Did that kind of speak to what you were talking about?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Now we are going to Jean. Jean, please unmute yourself.
Okay, I am unmuted. And Sarah, thanks so much. This was great. A great presentation. And I really appreciated your descriptions of the agriculture there. Because, Western style, U.S. business agriculture is bad for the land. It's good for profits, but bad for the land, bad for the people. And we all know the problems there. So that was great. My question has to do with liberation theology, because I think probably many of us here are kind of open atheists, but I had a friend that was very into liberation theology and talked about how third world people see the Bible through much different eyes than first world peoples. And there's something called a book or something called the Gospel and Art by the Peasants of Solon Taname, I think. And it's when they illustrate the Bible, it's something like the slaughter of the innocents. We see it, Roman soldiers, just killing little innocent people. And they see it as Nicaraguans, children, little brown-skinned babies being killed by people in the olive drab of the Somoza National Guard. So that's different. When they see the Pharaoh, they see it, we see it as this, person in Egypt a long time ago. They see it as Uncle Sam. So the whole attitude of people in Nicaragua and throughout the third world and Latin America um, is there in liberation theology. And I wonder if you have anything to say on that.
Well, I have a very personal comment to go with that. I visited Nicaragua in the 1980s with Witness for Peace. And we were there to observe and find out about the Contra War and what was going on. And we were taken up to a little tiny village up on the northern edge of Nicaragua, where you could look across at the next ridge. And the villagers said, yeah, at night, the Contra come across that ridge. And over here's, Uncle Juan, and he lost his leg last week from that. And we buried, Carlos, 2 weeks ago from the Contra attack coming right over that ridge. And our job there was we wore these horrible bright yellow t-shirts. And the idea was that the Contra could see a handful of US citizens in this village dressed in these awful yellow t-shirts, and they wouldn't shoot because it's, bad PR to kill US citizens with US bullets. And so they wouldn't shoot. And that would give the village 2 or 3 days to harvest their bean crop or put a roof on the school or whatever it was that they needed to do. So we're up there doing whatever it is that they needed us to help them do. And they have this little table there with 2 flags draped across it, a Sandinista flag and a Nicaraguan flag. And it was the dry season, that there was this little like a mason jar with a little sprig in it, supposed to be a little flower thing in the middle of the table. And we said, oh, what's happening here? And they said, oh, we're fixing to have a ceremony. The Nicaraguan government has declared amnesty for any of the Contra who will lay down their arms and come back into their communities. And that's because many of the Contra had joined up because that was a way to get fed because things were so bad in Nicaragua. So we said, yeah, really? They said, yeah. And one of these Contra are going to come back and we're going to have this celebration. And, Juan and Carlos and Pablo and all their little farms join. And so they're each giving a little bit of land to this guy so he can have out of the corner where they join, so he can have a little bit of farmland to start on. And we're going to have this celebration. And I said, hang on just a second. You just told us that right over there, the Contra came over at night, and that's where your people have died and been injured and all from these nightly attacks. And one of these guys is coming back to be reinstated into your community. And they said, yeah, we're going to have this celebration. And I said, how can you do that? And now I grew up Presbyterian, it goes way back. So I said, how can you do that? And they looked me straight in the face and they said, well, Jesus said to love your enemies as yourself. And I went, oh, okay then. This is a different kind of faith. And that to me is the perfect example of liberation theology. You are with and on behalf of the poor, whatever that means.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Now we're going to Paulina. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much. Such a wonderful presentation. I have a question about NGOs in general. And this distinction, you see, I think Nicaragua expelled the National Endowment for Democracy. Am I correct in that? Correct me if I'm wrong. And USAID is not very welcome. And that's way before the Trump administration took their knives to it. And, you know, when we look at the work of organizations like yours, being being a 501c3 in the being a 501c3 in the United States, and the work that you do, you clarified this is, you know, you're led by the needs of the people on the ground as opposed to the, you know, the nonprofit industrial complex agenda. Can you speak a bit about that kind of tension in Nicaragua, what they did about the presence of foreign NGOs and how they distinguish your work, say, from the work that is not welcome? Thanks.
Well, maybe a couple of examples. When Hurricane Mitch hit, it totally wiped out Nicaragua. And I mean, completely. 10 feet of water fell in 5 days. It was phenomenal. And it was at the end of the rainy season, so the ground was soaked already. Roots were already loose. Big trees came down. They took out bridges. You know, it was crazy. And that's when 12,000 people were dumped on this land with no shade, no nothing, right down the road from us. It was a very long time before the big guys, like the Red Cross or USAID or whatever, could do anything. They had too many rules and regulations to do anything. We took our 4x4 and bumped around the streets that the Corps of Engineers was carving out and said, pick somebody on your block to represent you. You don't know your neighbors, but y'all decide, you know, who can come represent you. And we're meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And you need to have your representatives tell us, what does your block need the most? And then we'll see what we can do to help with that. And it turns out it was temporary housing and latrines. And so volunteers that came down started putting up temporary housing and digging latrines because that's what the people needed. And if the neighbor said, why are you digging it for that person and not for me? We said, because your block leaders as a committee decided who needed it the most, who needed the temporary housing the most. We had enough to do 100, who needed the 100 first, and then who needed the second 100. We didn't make those choices. First thing you know, USAID was happy to give us some money for temporary housing. And then when Muckety Mucks came down to see what was happening with USAID money, they came out and toured Nueva Vida because they had never had anybody take USAID money and turn it around and put it immediately into action without it being held up by bureaucracies. And meanwhile, we watched the Red Cross get brand new trucks, you know, and brand new ambulances and drive around in spiffy new vehicles. And we went, this is crazy. So part of it is that the big guys are hampered by bureaucracy in terms of switching gears immediately if something is needed immediately. Part of it is that now, since 2018, well, we went to Nicaragua in 94. And in 94, you said, we're an NGO, we'd like to come help. And they said, you are welcome, please come in. That's great. And that's all it was. We had the benefit of having the signature of Padre Miguel Descoto behind us, which was fabulous. But you weren't required to prove that you were going to do what you said you were going to do. In 2018, with the coup attempt, lots and lots and lots of money was funneled into Nicaragua to overthrow the government from US sources. And it came through some of these big NGOs. It was totally illegal. It was totally irresponsible. And the Nicaraguan government said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And they cracked down. And so they started, after it was all over, they went back and they said, okay, starting with 2018, you have to show us where every dime has come from and where you have spent every dime. Now, we could do that. It took enormous months of work to go back and recreate it. But we were a North Carolina NGO running shelters for battered women and homeless people and stuff in Statesville, North Carolina, before we ever went to Nicaragua. So we already knew how to keep good records. So it took a lot of time and effort, but we could go back and do it. And so we are in fine standing with the Nicaraguan government because we've been able to do that. But on the other hand, you have some little community group that's, you know, running a soup kitchen on the corner, you know, for kids, street kids or whatever. And somebody comes to see them and they say, oh, this is great. Here's $100. And they say, great, we need $100 for tomatoes and onions. They go down to the market, they spend their $100, they come back and feed the kids, and there's no paper trail. And they could not prove it at all. So there are good folks who were NGOs doing good work who couldn't prove anything, who got shut down. There were also NGOs that were started like, you know, John Smith is down here and he wants to start a club for boys. And okay, so he's there for a couple of years. The club goes, then he leaves. The club falls apart. It hasn't really been operational for 10 or 15 years, but it's still in the books. So those got closed because they didn't exist anymore. And then there were the big guys who got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. No, that's a bad analogy. They got caught having done this money laundering, funneled money through for things that were not part of their NGO work. And then they got shut down or sent or put in jail or whatever. And that's what the U.S. press heard. The U.S. press heard, oh, Nicaragua's closing all the NGOs and being terrible to Catholic priests and this and that and the other. And nobody heard. And those were the people that were funding the coup attempt. And that's called treason. And so you convict people of treason when they do it, or at least you're supposed to. And in Nicaragua, that's what happened. So there are a lot of different reasons, but part of it is the logistics for the big guys. And part of it was simply not, well, we've had medical volunteers who wanted to bring this, that, or the other into Nicaragua. And the government has said, no, you can't bring that in, like Sudafed. You can't bring in Sudafed. And they said, but we want to be able to bring it in and give it to people who need it in the clinic. And they said, no, you can bring in everything else, but you can't bring in Sudafed because we're really tough on drugs. So you will not bring in Sudafed. So when I come up here to the States, I take home my little 30 tablets of Sudafed that I can take home as my own personal antihistamine, and I can't take any more because, no, you're not bringing that into our country. We're tough on drugs. So does that kind of speak to what you were asking about?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. Now we're going to go to Richard Wright. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Actually, Paulina sort of anticipated one of my questions, and that was about the. I think you answered it. In that it sounded to me like you do get funds from either USAID and or National Endowment for Democracy. And I'm not terribly surprised by either one of those.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We do not.
Oh, you don't get it. Okay.
We do not. After Hurricane Mitch, there was a limited amount of aid that finally came through the U.S. Congress in USAID to Nicaragua, and we were able to go march in with our U.S. passports to the head of USAID and say, where's the money? We're not seeing it do any good. Give us some to do some good. But that was that one time. We do not get, we are supported by grassroots donations. We don't get any of that stuff at all. And the other one that you mentioned,
well,
I just won't choose to say anything about them. How's that?
Well, okay. Thank you for answering that. The other question I had, actually, the real question I had, is it sounds to me like you're doing work basically on the Pacific side of Nicaragua. Are you engaged on the Atlantic side at all? And if so, to the extent, because in part Nicaragua has always had the Pacific side seemed to be more developed than the Atlantic side, and that's where the Contras and the Ray Contras got their foot in. And are you at all engaged on the Atlantic side? Thank you.
So So Central America exists because of tectonic plates shifting and volcanoes erupting and land forming and then finally separating the oceans, right, into east and west. So those same mountains, we have 7 active volcanoes, those same mountains, volcanoes, active or not, form the backbone running down through Nicaragua. The western side is the side that got the Spanish colonialization, et cetera, and that's where U.S. big business got involved, and that's where the main government center is, et cetera. On the Caribbean coast, Nicaragua has departments, not states, but they're called departments. On the Atlantic coast, the Caribbean coast, there are 2, the Northern Autonomous Region and the Southern Autonomous Region. And with the high mountains down the middle, there was basically very little to no communication between the 2 sides. You could take the little windy road up to the top of one of the mountains and ride the river down to the Caribbean coast and hope you didn't get attacked by pirates robbing you on your boat. I mean, that's the way you flew over. You paid for a little plane hop over. Last year, or maybe it might be 2 years ago now, a highway was built from Managua all the way to the Atlantic coast. This is phenomenal, with bridges across rivers, et cetera, so that the Atlantic coast and the western part are now connected. The Atlantic coast people are the ones that got hit by those 2 hurricanes. The western side provided immediate rebuilding of houses, schools, churches. We helped provide what we could in terms of, clothes and seed for replanting. The government provided seed for replanting. There was active participation between the 2 sides, and the government on the west evacuated people on the east before the hurricanes hit, so that there was almost zero, that wasn't quite zero, but there was almost no loss of life. So there has been the communication and the coordination between the 2 sides, but they've developed very different cultures and very different lifestyles and only now are just kind of getting opened up to communication, so that 99% of electricity in the whole country means that the Atlantic coast now has electricity as well. That sort of thing. That means, though, that our work is very close to our work with organic farmers. They've mostly been on the western side. The Atlantic coast people are fisher folk and that kind, and we haven't done anything with fisher folk on the Atlantic coast. Whether we ever will in the future, I don't know. Now that communication is opened up more, transportation is opened up more, that I don't know. But at the moment, we haven't really done anything with Atlantic coast folks except emergency relief after hurricanes.
Thank you. Now we go to.
Let me add one other thing, because sure. I think this is right remarkable. The 2 regions, the 2 departments on the Atlantic coast were given autonomous status in the sense that after the revolution, they were allowed to set up their own local and regional everything. The only thing they were not allowed to control was stuff that affected international national stuff, like they can't declare war, they can't, that sort of stuff. That's left to the central government, and they have representatives in the central government. But everything on their own autonomous areas about what they want to do, not do, how to run it, all that, it's been left up to them in respect for the cultures of that Atlantic coast.
Great. Okay. Now we're going to go to Sheila Hamanaka. Please raise your hands using the icons or the feature of Zoom below. So go ahead, Sheila.
Oh yeah, thank you. I have a visual problem. It's very hard for me to distinguish the little symbols down there. Thank you so much. I apologize I arrived late, but I don't know if other people saw this, but on Democracy Now! Just recently, there was a very damaging report about Nicaragua, extremely damaging, in which some guy said, well, I used to help Nicaragua like X number of decades ago, and I was a real advocate, but now I've discovered that, there's all this undemocratic things going on in Nicaragua. And he also said that Ortega's stepdaughter is accusing him or has accused him of raping her when she was younger. So I was wondering if you could respond to those, to that Democracy Now! Report.
Sure. First of all, the report about his stepdaughter, that is very old news. That was news a decade ago. So that's old news. We used to really trust everything that Democracy Now! Said. We're faithful listeners on Democracy Now! We're not so keen on everything that gets said anymore because we've heard many reports out of Democracy Now! That we just don't agree with. So take my response with that grain of salt. So here's what I will say and what I've been saying to the whole, oh, is Daniel Ortega a dictator? Is he just, running roughshod over democracy? Is he, totally out of control? We need to squash him flat, whatever kind of question that comes up when I'm speaking. Here's my response. Nicaragua elects parties. They do not elect individuals. There are many, many parties in Nicaragua, but there are two big ones, the Sandinistas and the Liberales. And they put together a whole slate, president, vice president, 100 people for the National Assembly, which is like our Congress, etc. When you go vote, you vote for that party. And people can grouse about Ortega. They can like him. They can not like him. They can think he's doing a good job. They can think he's nuts. They like what the party is doing. They like the fact that their kids are going through university education for free. They like the fact they have water now. They like the fact they have electricity now. They like the fact that in all the major parks, there's free Wi-Fi. So you can take your used cell phone and go down to the Wi-Fi. You don't even have to have a phone number. And you can sit there and Google your research for your business or your schoolwork or whatever, or just Facebook your friends for free in major parks all over the place. They like what is happening in the country, the healthcare. And so they vote, they keep voting for the Sandinista party every election. Now, we've had elections every 5 or 6 years, and once they came back into power but were voted back in 2006, and these foci, what is it? When they started to be back on what was good for the poor, they keep winning. And you automatically are registered to vote when you're 16. A huge percentage of people turn out on that one day of voting to vote. There are election observers. The elections have not been challenged as being fraudulent in any way by anybody. And Ortega and the FSLN keep winning by a majority. Does that mean he's perfect? No. Does that mean I like everything he does? No. But in my opinion, people who are elected to positions of power, they use the power that they have while they are in office to push their agendas. Our presidents get to appoint Supreme Court justices. Do we necessarily like their appointments? Maybe yes, maybe no. But appointing a Supreme Court justice is a power that the president has. So if Ortega does something with his power, that doesn't necessarily mean it's unconstitutional. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's breaking the law. It means he's using his presidential power to push his agendas. Has he done that? Oh, yeah. Has he done things that some people like? Sure. Has he done some things that people don't like? Sure. Is he an honorable, clean-cut, trustworthy, I want my young daughter hanging out with him? No. But on the other hand, the people have water and electricity and health care, and their kids can go to school, and the roads are better. And the poor people say, I can get my crops out to market because there are bridges over the rivers. And the rich people say, I can make money faster because the infrastructure is better. And they keep voting for the party. Now, at some point, he will stop being the president, the person being elected to be president, but hopefully the party will keep on with its focus, because Stan tried to get me to say before this thing, he said, no, so are you an Ortega supporter? And I said, Stan, I am not going to say that. If you want to say, does she support what the FSLN has been doing for the people of Nicaragua? Absolutely. So does that you don't hear that up here. All you hear is about the person. You don't hear what the party is doing for people and why they keep electing the party.
Okay, I understand that. However, when you said the charge that he sexually assaulted his stepdaughter is old news, that's not exactly a denial.
No, it's not
true.
I think he probably did. You know, I don't have any proof of that. My guess would be that he probably did. But the party is doing good things for the people. And if they want to keep putting him at the top of the ticket, that's not my choice. My choice is I don't vote in Nicaragua. That is not mine to choose. Just like here, who the Republicans choose to run, or who the Democrats choose to run, or who the Libertarians choose to run. You know, we have some say in that here in the US, but that's not our job in Nicaragua. However, to badmouth about Nicaragua because we don't like one person or they're not morally responsible enough for us seems a bit pot calling the kettle black.
Thank you. Now we go to Charlie. Please unmute yourself.
Sheila asked my question. I would just make the comment, and thank you for your answer. It's really helpful. I would just make the comment about Democracy Now! I work with Haiti Action Committee, and we feel Haiti Democracy Now! Is completely unreliable about Haiti as well, including interviewing people who are calling Death Squad leader Cherizier Barbecue a leader of democracy when actually he's slaughtering towns and neighborhoods that are supportive of the Levelus movement that tries to accomplish the same thing the Sandinistas are trying to accomplish in Nicaragua. So with that, I'll close, and thank you very much for your work. I worked with Nicaragua Solidarity many, many years ago.
Thank you so much. Now we go to Citizen of the Planet One.
Hello, thank you very much. You partly answered this question, Sarah, but I guess I wanted to ask you, and I hesitate to do so because you answered so much of it. First of all, I want to say, before I get to my main comment, Biden has certainly been accused or even witnessed in TV news coverage of being pretty creepy around girls and young women, and he's still celebrated as the president that we should have had he not dropped out. But I mean, yeah, he's still somewhat celebrated. So I'm trying to get to my main comments. I have disparate notes here. I think unless you have, or unless anyone has pretty credible evidence other than mere accusation that Ortega probably did rape his daughter, I think you should be very cautious about that. Anyone should be cautious unless they actually have pretty credible evidence. This is a pretty old tactic by the US government. They claim that somebody assaulted or raped their daughter or chronically molested their daughter. And I want to say from my own experience as a Black male who's, Black men are commonly being accused of being sexual predators, including myself, by just plain old-fashioned white racism, let alone the government. And I also want to say, as the housemate of a good lefty attorney, that people should be very careful about saying this, because she can tell you about a lot of stories too, where women are used to falsely accuse men, especially on the left. So I don't think you should say that, Sarah, unless you have credible evidence. I think maybe you can say we don't know, or so far there hasn't been credible evidence, but I don't think anyone should say something like that unless there's pretty credible evidence. Amy Goodman has been horrible on Ukraine too. And by friends of mine who know Syria a lot better than I do, Amy Goodman has been pretty horrible on Syria too. So Amy Goodman has her very much pro-imperialist inclinations that many of us don't understand. So I'm going to try to wrap up. I'm probably getting to my 2 minutes. Are you
Already passed.
I'm sorry.
Already passed, but go ahead.
I'll get right to the
I
question.
want to clarify one
Can
thing.
I get right to the question before you answer?
I want to clarify one thing if I can. I did not say that he did it.
No, you said he probably did. I
said from being in Nicaragua when all this was coming up many, many, many years ago, it looks like he probably did. But I don't have the evidence, and I am like you. You need to have the evidence, and besides, nobody's perfect, you know? So I'm looking at what the party is doing. And that's where I said the poor are doing better. That for me is good news.
Okay, if I may just wrap up.
Just finish up your thoughts. Yes,
thank you. First of all, I don't think anyone should say that someone probably did unless there's evidence. I'm just telling you, as a Black person, as a person familiar with the U.S. government tactics.
Daughter, the actual victim accused him of it.
Whatever. I'm telling you as a Black male that for whom these charges come almost chronically or certainly semi-regularly from just good old-fashioned white racism, that this does not help women who actually have credible cases and can't get their cases addressed. So my question, are you aware of the Wikipedia article on Daniel Ortega, which is pretty damning? And if you are aware of that, have you responded to it, or how would you respond to it? I'm sorry, I don't have a better defined question. Thank you.
I have not read it, and I have not responded to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Janet, and then I'm going to give myself the next one. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. It's good to know that Nicaragua continues to progress. I'm wondering if you might know the whereabouts and current activities of Nicaraguan-born, later to become a U.S. citizen, Camilo Mejia. He served for a few months in 2003 during the Iraq War, became a conscientious objector, and spent 9 months in prison. He then became one of the leaders of Iraq Veterans Against the War. On August 5th, 2018, he appeared live as the featured guest at an ICSS forum at the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library in Oakland, where he spoke about the USAID and NED funding of the violent US-led coup attempt that was going on in Nicaragua. There was a demonstration outside the forum by supporters of the coup holding Nicaraguan flags, who banged on the doors during Mejia's presentation and almost stormed the forum. So do you know anything about him now? And also, I can't remember if you talked about this, but do you know the status of the Nicaragua Canal project? I understand it was canceled last year.
We do know Camila, and we watched all that happen that you described, and were appalled that after serving in the U.S. military, he was treated that way. I do not know where he is now or what's happening with him now, so I don't have any update for you. But we were well aware of everything that you mentioned in connection with him. The canal was also big news a while back. We haven't heard anything recently. It hasn't been in the news in Nicaragua, in terms of TV news or newspaper news or whatever in Nicaragua. We don't know what's going on with it. The last thing we heard was China was going to do it, and they surveyed the route, and they came across some indigenous archaeological digs and things like that along the way of the route. And so they were going to have to figure out what to do about that, to move the route or to do the archaeological digs and salvage stuff and move that stuff out of the way or whatever. And that all that was going to have to take time and whatever. And then we haven't heard anything since then. So I do not know what the current situation is. It may be, I say this jokingly, but if the polar ice cap melts enough that boats can go through there, there won't be a need for the canal. I mean, environmentally speaking, that's the truth. But I don't know. I have no current information about the canal at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna call myself. Thank you for the presentation. And Janet stole my question about the canal, especially now that United States is preparing to take over the canal, if not by force, by ports there. So I believe that is going to be another topic that's going to come up in the next coming years. But my question on Nicaragua is this. I mean, I appreciate your work there and the volunteer, and as we've seen in the pictures, how the water and the fishing and all those work that's going on there. But where is the Nicaraguan government on these? The reason why I'm asking is when you compare it to Venezuela and other people, other nations that have resisted imperialism, does Nicaragua have a vision, or the Sandinista, I should say, have a vision on where they are going? Is it to struggle and to stay alive day by day, or do they have a goal? Do they embrace the 21st century socialism, as Venezuela called it, or are they doing any kind of nationalization of private enterprises, banks, and other stuff that would consolidate the power of Sandinistas and the people against those who are collaborating with imperialism, even as we speak? Thank you.
I'm one little person working for one little tiny NGO in one little corner of Nicaragua. So I'm really not very qualified to speak to that, except to say that what keeps getting announced by various government departments and units are these programs that are helping the majority of the Nicaraguan people. During COVID, they had weekly or monthly announcements of how many people had gotten vaccinated and where to go to get vaccines and how to line up for vaccines, and people did that. They are now advertising, it's time, February was when school started again. So making sure that kids got in school, kids are given a little backpack with a few supplies in it to start the school year. This kind of stuff is what the government's pushing to help the majority of the people. And they have expanded electricity to 99% of the country. They've got solar and wind and geothermal and hydroelectric, all these kinds of renewable energies happening to a huge percentage of the electricity that way. They speak out. Well, this would be Ortega again, speaks out against U.S. policy and gets, he's gotten more and more flagrant in his language about it. It's kind of like he tried to be nice for a while and it didn't do him any good. We got sanctions anyway, so now he's just saying whatever he thinks, and sometimes it's really crazy. But he's going, I tried to be nice, it didn't work, so now I'm just going to say what I think. And he talks about U.S. imperialism and all that kind of stuff. It's not mentioned very much, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with this, but Nicaragua voted with Russia about Ukraine because Nicaragua feels like it is being forced into a partnership with Russia and China because the U.S. has slammed the door and shut it out. Nicaragua originally wanted to be, to deal with everybody, to deal with its own country, deal with, at that point, the Eastern Bloc nations, then deal with the Western Bloc nations, and deal with the unaffiliated nations. That was all part of the original Constitution when the revolution succeeded. But the U.S. has shut that down and stopped that option and told U.S. allies not to trade and deal with Nicaragua, which is forcing Nicaragua into other directions. Whether they would go there anyway or not, I don't know. But that is where they are. They have canceled trading with Taiwan because China is a bigger economic market long-term. So they've got to do where they can visualize economic options happening in the future. Is Taiwan still present in Nicaragua? Yeah. But it's not the official avenue of relationships. It's now Nicaragua and China. So I don't know where this is going. And it's not where my life is spent, is in analyzing or paying a whole lot of attention to it one way or the other. I'm just trying to help communities get what they need.
Thank you.
I didn't answer your question very well. I'm sorry.
Hobie, can you unmute yourself?
Done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, I want to first of all thank you so much for the update. When I was in graduate school, I went to Nicaragua for about 5 months right after the revolution specifically to observe the Campaña para Alfabetización, the adult literacy program, and of course was taken by the country and always have had a great affection for it. My wife also is from Nicaragua, and I go back periodically, mainly for vacations. But you've provided a lot of insight. One thing, actually, just right off the top of my head, I just need a quick yes or no or a quick answer on the type of vaccine that Nicaragua was using. Did they use the Cuban Abdala vaccine, or somehow did they get Pfizer's horrible vaccine?
We mostly did not get Pfizer or Moderna. We mostly got, in the very beginning, we got help from India and Russia and China and those vaccines. I just got my COVID booster in Nicaragua. If I pull out my card, I can read you what the vaccine was. But right before I traveled, I thought I better get my update on it. Let me see if I can lay my hands on it.
Okay.
So here's our vaccine cards.
Cool.
Well, I have to read handwriting. Cornazels. It looks like CORN maybe. It ends in cell, CELL.
Well, that's was just a quick question, but clearly not Pfizer, clearly not Big Pharma from US, which
No.
I would have expected. Okay, thank you. The other thing is actually what I wanted to focus on, Central America has generally had trouble with narco trafficking cartels basically running the governments up to and including Mexico, which is, in spite of 10 years of AMLO and Morena, they're still a major player in governance there. The cartels are. Nicaragua has significantly been quite different. And my hypothesis is that is because even during the neoliberal times, they maintained control of the police and the army. Can you give us any insight into how that seems to be working out or shaping out, and maybe what the difference is between Nicaragua and, say, El Salvador or Honduras along those lines? Because that seems to be very critical, among other things.
Nicaragua is very tough on the drug cartels and has done everything it can to keep them out. Our own personal hypothesis is that the 2018 coup attempt, largely funded by the US, that the cartels went, ooh, this is a chance, and came in to join that. I can't prove that. I don't know that. But it didn't work. But they are very tough on drugs. They prosecute heavily if somebody's caught. Now, I am sure with two oceans, one on each side, that there are little boats hopping up and down inside the coves, but there is no big cartel power action in Nicaragua, which really frustrates them because it provides a block across the land passage from south to north. We had college students who were volunteering with us, back before, and we would have Nicaraguan staff come to us and say, you need to speak to your volunteers. They're wanting to, try a little something and want us to know where they can get a little something. And they shouldn't do that because they'll be arrested. And we go back to our volunteers and say, don't do that here. Go to New York City and play if you want, but don't do that here because you will get arrested and you will be put in jail and we cannot help you. That will be it. And so they are very tough. Now, are there kids sniffing glue? Sure. And is there some drug action? Probably so. But like I said, even with the Sudafed example, you don't bring stuff in. It is absolutely verboten. They know that if they let the cartels in and give the cartels power, that they lose control of how they can help people. And they're just very serious about it.
Okay.
So
Thank
far,
you.
so good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's go to Raj. Please unmute yourself, Raj.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I learned a lot about Nicaragua. I went last year to Costa Rica, but didn't go to Nicaragua.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, Costa Rica seemed to be a very beautiful country, but run by America or something, or a huge American influence.
In Costa Rica? Yes.
Yeah, Costa Rica. Yeah, it seemed like it was, American protectorate or something. So Nicaragua and Honduras are adjacent to each other. So one question I have is, why are these countries so different? They would, Honduras, United States has been successful in Nicaragua. FSLN has kept U.S. power at bay and dealt with them. Even though, the idea of people who came back and murdered and then came back and got integrated is also in India, the Gandhian method. I'm not so convinced of that method, but it seemed to have worked. So, do you see a lot of big business from either United States or Europe or China? I don't expect Russia to be there, but these big monopolies operating there. And how does the government get funds to do all this social work? Is it they tax more for do they tax more bigger business or something? How does it work?
Again, not my area of expertise, but there are free trade zones in Nicaragua that were set up during the neoliberal years where U.S. companies and others could get, you set up your free trade zone and then Nicaraguan law doesn't apply there, so that all the worker rights things and things that are very important in Nicaragua do not apply to workers in the free trade zone because that area is owned by whatever country's setting it up. So there's been that kind of investment from big business. China is very, very active in Nicaragua since they switched from Taiwan to China. I do not know how much control is over that. I do not know how much they can steer the way they want that to go or not, or if they've given away way too much, power elsewhere. I don't know. Time will tell, I suppose. In our sustainable agriculture stuff, working with organic farmers, we had good success with European lenders who would lend money, large amounts of money to the farmers for a crop cycle. That got pulled when U.S. sanctions jumped in again, and the U.S. loudly said, oh, our partners should not trade with Nicaragua, and the farmers lost their loan support mid-crop cycle, which was the end of that. But I don't know how seriously other places are taking the U.S. restrictions on Nicaragua in terms of curbing their own stuff. I only know how it's affecting our particular projects. I know that Venezuela and Nicaragua were staunch supporters of each other for many, many, many years. And then Venezuela was in so much difficulty on its own that Nicaragua sort of lost that piece of the support, you might say. But there is a whole organization of Latin American nations who are trying to make international policy and trade and communication with each other in ways that are beneficial for everybody in their countries together. And the U.S. is not part of that. The Organization of American States is still U.S. controlled. That doesn't do anybody any good. So the Latin American organization is trying to build the bridge work and the communication work between nations without the U.S. To try to avoid U.S. interference. That didn't answer your question very well, but that's not.
No, it's okay. Is when they put the restrictions on trading with Nicaragua, was that Trump's previous office?
Oh, it's been going on a long time, and it tends to be a sanction against individuals, and it's supposed to, oh no, it only affects these individuals, it doesn't affect anybody else. Ha ha. Not true. It shakes down to what poor people can do. And that's true of sanctions anywhere in the world. It gets the poor folks. But the sanctions have not been on the country, the nation of Nicaragua. They have been on particular pieces, parts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm allowing, I believe, those who have not spoken to go first. So Judith, if you can please unmute yourself. You're next. Judith?
Yes,
yeah.
Did I do it? Okay. All right. So yeah, I just want to know in the aquaponics tanks, what do you feed the fish? Also, does Nicaragua have an army or armed forces? And are the how did the soldiers join? Are they drafted or are they volunteered? And is there any student or tourist exchange at all with the United States? And the same with China and Russia. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, working backwards, I do not think there are student exchanges supported by the U.S. government and the Nicaraguan government between the two nations. That may be completely false. I don't know. There are groups like us that work in Nicaragua that we have volunteers that go back and forth. We don't have Nicaraguan volunteers coming to the U.S. because A, they'd never get visas, and B, we can't afford to bring them up. So we had the guild representative of the potters, of the ceramic artists in Nicaragua, was invited to come to Bucknell University in Pennsylvania and had his plane ticket and his everything about his trip fully funded by Bucknell to come up. And he couldn't get a U.S. visa, so he couldn't make the trip. So I don't think there are those kinds of things, but I do not know that. Fish, what do they feed the fish food? I don't know. They do buy little pellets of something or other that they have to supplement a little bit to the fish because the plants clean the water and put the clean water back in the tank, and they have to then supplement with the fish food, but I don't know what's in it. So I can't answer. And then you had something in the middle. What was the middle part?
Any exchange with China and or Russia?
Yes, Nicaragua does with China and Russia.
So students go to China?
Oh, I don't know. See, I don't know about students going anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Except for volunteers coming to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now we are going to the second round, I guess. Stan, you're next. Unmute yourself, please.
Thanks. Talking about the democracy now, we should also bring up the United Nations Human Rights Council that has been putting out regular reports attacking Nicaragua, for which we have repeatedly organizations in the United States and Britain and others have repeatedly written to them to complain about reports and to give our own assessments based on the people being in Nicaragua about what's going on there. And this UN Human Rights Council just completely ignores all this information that makes anything about Nicaragua look positive, and they just put out these very negative reports. So Nicaragua has left the UN Human Rights Council because they got sick of them. But I would imagine that they would probably be appearing on Democracy Now! Sometime with their latest reports. The problem with stuff like that is, there's no way, it's very hard to find out unless you're really in on things about what the actual truth is or how to respond to these kind of things. So we also try to respond to Democracy Now! To get on an alternative view, but we haven't had any luck. Now, Camilo Mejia was on Democracy Now! Back, I think, in 2018, and he was treated pretty badly there. But speaking of him, I think that Jerry Condon and the Vets for Peace are having a delegation to Nicaragua right now, maybe. And they're going to be doing a Nicaragua webinar report back with the Nicaragua Solidarity Coalition, and I think Camilo Mejia will be part of that webinar. About the, well, if you want to read more about the Human Rights Council, I mean, I think you've had John Perry on this show. He's written about
Yeah.
Human Rights Council, what they're up to. I would say about the politics of Nicaragua now, yes, I noticed up till 2018, I wasn't really paying much attention to Nicaragua, and their politics didn't really seem all that anti-imperialist, but now I think they're very outspoken and vocal in their defense of countries under attack by imperialism and defending countries that the U.S. is going after. Like, I guess the most famous one is that they took Germany to the International Court of Justice about their funding of genocide in Palestine, which cannot take the U.S. because they don't belong to that legal framework.
Well, and the U.S. then immediately imposed additional sanctions on Nicaragua after they did that.
Yeah, they're going to make them pay for doing that.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes past.
Yes.
Okay, if you want to finish up, okay, go ahead.
I was wondering, Sarah, can you have any suggestions about how we here can help raise money for the Jubilee House? Yes, the Jubilee House and your programs.
Send checks. Give to us online. If you go to our website, I put it in the chat. If you
like any kind of publicity we can do to other people.
Absolutely. I have some more opportunities on my speaking trip to speak when I'm on the ground someplace and can do a Zoom with people. I have a limited ability to get to new places because it's pretty full. I think I have 57 speaking engagements in 8 weeks or something like that, all over the place. But I can fit in some Zooms if there are people that want to work with me on that. And I would love to do that. I've put in the chat that for people that would like information they can trust about Nicaragua, I highly recommend the Alliance for Global Justice website. And they have good, trustworthy information about all kinds of things. So I recommend that. But if you want to help us in particular in our work, if you go to our website, there's a way to donate online, and there's a donation address for people that like to write checks and that kind of stuff. Or email me and I can help you.
Thank you. Now we go to Raman.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I learned quite a bit, and thanks for the opportunity to ask my question. I think, the kind of programs that you outlined for us falls into that category of mixed economy for countries such as Nicaragua or other countries who are following a leftist path towards developing. And so I was interested in question number one is, what are the specific policies that the government has employed to support your activities? And that if you would go to another country that was not following the same path, let's say a developing country in Africa, you would not find the same policies, you would not have the same opportunities to help the people. Thank you.
The situation after 2018 in the coup, when they then started to examine NGOs very, very carefully, just recently they have, instead of just kind of you go do your own thing, what they have structured is actually a system that I think is very effective and efficient. We now are, for example, our own programs, we now put each project in relationship with a department in the government. For example, our health work, our health clinic, we are a private clinic run by an NGO under the auspices of MINSA, the National Ministry of Health. That means that, for example, we could not bring in Sudafed to offer in our own clinic because MINSA, the National Ministry of Health, oversees it. That's just the right off the top of my head kind of example. On the other hand, it means that we can, because of that connection, we can have volunteers from medical schools come and work as a volunteer for a day when we're doing a health clinic and having wide attendance by people through the community. And we have a good relationship with MINSA, and we can get permission for U.S. doctors to come down and serve and work in our clinic. And no Nicaraguan doctor could come up here and serve. I mean, they would never get permission without passing U.S. medical boards and stuff. But an active physician here can get permission to work that week in Nicaragua while they're volunteering if we turn the paperwork in and get it through the system, so that the National Health Ministry knows who's where and what they're doing and what piece of the puzzle they're serving, which is really very helpful. And like the Fisheries Institute with the aquaponics, they're coming in to train our aquaponics families. That's from the, I don't know, what do you call fish people? Pescadorians or whatever they are. The Fisheries Institute folks are part of the government, and our aquaponics whole program is approved by that part of the government. So this is the way they are relating to everything that NGOs are doing now. You explain what you want to do, you get connected to the oversight committee, whoever they are, for that specific project, and then you can keep going with that project. It means there's less wasted effort, I guess I would say, because they know that if we're doing X in this little geographic area, then they don't need to do X in this little geographic area, and they can expend their resources in a different geographic area to make what they have go farther, if that kind of makes sense.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we go to Janet. Janet, please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Do you know what the relationship Nicaragua has with Haiti? Also, what is Nicaragua's position on Israel's genocide and land grabs?
Nicaragua is firmly on the side of Palestine and calls Israel's aggression genocide in exactly those same words, and took Germany, like it was said, took Germany to task in the World Court for, actions, and condemns the U.S. for our support of Israel to the exclusion of Palestinians.
Does Nicaragua trade with Israel?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the trading policies anywhere. If I was guessing, I would say they would rather not, but that's just, I don't know. They have been pro-Palestinian for a long, long time. They just dedicated a park in downtown Managua to the Palestinians. So they are very firmly on the side of Palestine there. Your other Haiti. Nicaragua has open borders. So people from all over can come through Haiti. And one of the things that the US has complained about is Haitian refugees coming to Nicaragua, get across the water to land and then moving north. Nicaragua doesn't keep anybody out. So folks from Haiti have come through, folks from Cuba have come through. When we first got to Nicaragua, the little Hospitalito in Ciudad Sandino it was during the neoliberal years. They didn't have Band-Aids, they didn't have alcohol, they didn't have gloves, they didn't have anything. And after the Sandinistas came back into power, Cuban physicians who were cataract surgeons came over and set up a cataract clinic in the Ciudad Sandino hospital and taught Nicaraguan doctors how to do cataracts, not all the fancy cataract removal stuff, but the basic stuff. And that cataract clinic is still operating every day in Ciudad Sandino. After they taught the Nicaraguan doctors what to do, the Cuban doctors went home. They had trained and then they went home. But Nicaragua has that kind of relationship with Cuba, with Haiti, with other Latin American countries. We've had refugees from Honduras come in after the military coup happened, and people really were fleeing for their lives. They were welcome to come to Nicaragua. Folks mostly don't want to stay in Nicaragua. It's not a very rich place to stay, but they certainly have open borders.
Right, but I'm talking about what is happening in Haiti right now.
I don't know.
Okay.
All right. Well, folks, we are nearly out of time. So I'd like to ask Sarah if you'd like to put in a few more words as closing, and then we will shut the session down.
And please put your names and emails in the chat. And Mehmet, if you could make sure the safe chat gets emailed to me or something. And then I'll put you on our quarterly newsletter lists. Thank you so
very
much, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah, for great information and presentation. So hope to see everybody here next week for our second, the other presentation. And everybody have a nice week, and see you all next Sunday.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Niebel Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, @yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Niebel Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.